So once you've kind of learned how to make some basic selections, played around with masks a little bit, there's a few other things that you might want to learn how to do, which would be how to make like adjustments or effects or changes, right? And so let's say that I've made my cat here, and I do. If I was doing this for real, I'd do a little better job, obviously. But the cat's like not quite in the right place, so I can use the move tool and I can just pull that cat around, right? And if I wanted to make it look like the cat was laying in this display case, how would I do that, right? So I could look at this image and try to like maybe rearrange it a little bit so that it looks a little bit better, right? And then I can grab my cat layer and I can kind of move it, but it's the size isn't quite right, the angle's not quite right. So how to fix that? So this is where you can actually grab a layer and transform it. So as long as you have the layer selected, you can go up here to layer, and you can go to let's see, or I'm sorry, maybe it's under edit, transform. It is. So it's not the layer itself, it's the edit, and then you go to transform. I just know the command T is the one that we always hit. And you'll see that it gives you these little a blue line around the whole layer, and these little handles. But I can actually change the size just by, clicking and dragging. If I wanted to make a little bit more and make that cat look a little smaller, so it looks like, oh yeah, it's actually in the case. Now we're getting somewhere, right? Getting there. And then if I wanted to change like the rotation, if you kind of mouse over it, you'll see that it gives you this little rotation option to like kind of tip it. So I could do that and like, all right, that looks like the cat that I know. And once you get it kind of organized the way you want to, you can hit enter, and it'll apply that transformation. So again, transforming things, there's a lot of options. You can go over here and you can do scale or rotation. You can distort it. So if I was really wanting to like mess with it, I could grab this and like change. I could really make it mess with the perspective kind of look on it. There's a lot of options that you can do on that. Again, when I'm done, just hit enter. It'll apply the transformation, and it's doing that to the whole layer, right? So I can do that to all the layers if I want to. And once I get something kind of that looks good, looks the way I want it to, I hit enter, and then it's done. So I want to make sure I save often, right? That's always a good idea. But that's the basics of like transforming your layers. So, and of course, if I wanted to, I could come down here, and if I drag this down and drop it onto this icon at the bottom, it looks like a plus. Now I'm going to have a copy of my layer. If I grab this move tool, I can make it look like this cat's like, sort of everywhere. If I wanted to make the cat look bigger, there you go. And then let's say I wanted to make it look like just the cat's head is poking out from behind this thing. Well, I would need to kind of get rid of the body, right, to let the shape of this statue behind it show through. So I could click on the mask, click on my brush up here, right, and then if I change the black and the white, I can actually go in here and like I can just draw the mask over that. A keyboard shortcut to make your brush bigger is the square brackets. So the square brackets on the keyboard will make it bigger or smaller. So I'm hitting the square brackets right now and just kind of like drawing really fast to get rid of all this excess stuff, right? So, it's looking pretty close, but I wasn't very careful with it. So now I can go in here and get my brush back again, and I can switch the colors around, and then I can make the brush really small. And I can carefully kind of sort of get on the edge of this so that it looks more like the cat's, just hovering there and looking at you from behind the Egyptian statue, because this is one of those cats that would get into everything, regardless of whether it's supposed to be there or not, right? So there you go. So now if I double click the hand to zoom back out, got a couple cats in there. So you can see how this works. This is obviously a really corny, silly example, but and I can change that around. So that's basics of like compositing things together and layering them in there. Other effects that you can make would be to like if I just like select my kind of statue head background back here, and let's say I make a selection of some sort, like I'll just use the rectangular marquee and go like this. I can, if I hit delete, it's just going to delete everything inside that square. But this has been imported as a smart object, so It's telling me I can't do that, so I can click OK. But I can then go in here and control click on this and go to rasterize layer. So what that'll do is that changes it from a smart object into an object that I could actually do something else to. And then if I hit delete, it will be gone. I'm seeing layer 0, which is behind it, and that'll give me, I can kind of punch holes and things if I want to do it that way. I'm going to undo that just because I don't really want to mess with that right now. But then the other thing that you can do would be, since I have this area selected, I could paint inside of it. I could erase partially inside of it, or I could go in here into like there's a whole bunch of options in here, like these filters, right? And so I could go in here to something like the blur gallery, and I could choose a spin blur, and I can apply it, and it'll only apply it in that area that I have selected, right? So there's all these options that you can play around with. That was a dumb choice because I'm not actually going to be able to see anything there, so I will click cancel on that one. Another thing that you can do once you have a selection made, so there's the filters, there's also these effects down here. So if you go down here, this little symbol that looks kind of like, I don't know, I think it looks like a yin and a yang kind of a thing, or just a circle with a square diagonal line through it. So you just click on that and it's going to give you a whole bunch of options. And so I could go in here and go like hue saturation, let's say, and that'll give me options to basically alter the hue and the saturation of everything that's underneath this new adjustment layer. So I'd have to move that up. So you can see it made a mask for me, and now I can change that. If I wanted to, I could change that red square into blue, right? So again, it's all built around the selection that I made that then made these little masks happen, right? So lots of different options that you can play around with there. If you don't like something, you can just click and drag on it and drag it to the garbage can, and it'll delete that whole thing. So out of your layers, so it's kind of gone now. So there you go. So you can make selections, you can play around with that, you can do effects. Like again, like if I wanted the cat to look like maybe it had a little bit of a shadow underneath it, probably what I would do is I would go ahead and just make a brand new layer. So this is gonna, if I click this plus button here, and I didn't drag anything down to it, I'm just gonna click it. It's just gonna give me a new blank layer, right? This layer 5. Nothing's on it. Well, then what I could do is I could go to my brush tool. So if I grab the brush tool right here, and I wanted to kind of paint or draw a little shadow underneath this, I can make my brush bigger, and then I can paint, and got to put it underneath that one. And you can kind of see it looks a little bit like shadow, right? But it's a little bit, that's a little much, right? It's a little harsh. So if I don't like the way that looks, I can always delete it with the eraser, which is this tool here. Kind of looks like a just like a little old school like rubber, one of those pink pearl erasers you might have had in school when you were a kid. So I can just delete anything that's on layer 5 and get rid of it. But what I would probably really do if I was going to actually do this is I would go up here to the brush, and then I would select my hardness. I'd probably make it a pretty soft brush, and then over here in flow I would just crank that down to like 2% or something like that. So I'm just barely, you can see it's just barely like giving it any kind of like sort of paint on this fake canvas. And now I could paint like a little more subtle shadow on there that looks a little more realistic, and I could build it up a little bit more slowly as if I wanted to do that. And now I might be able to get this to start looking a little bit more kind of like realistic if that was your goal. So again, if I just turn everything off, you can see that's just what I painted there with the paintbrush. And again, the eraser would let me go in and like delete parts of it, and I can make the eraser, I can change the flow of the eraser and stuff like that also, so can get really subtle with these things. So that is some basic adjustments of, again, the effects all live up there. So if you select the whole layer and you go into your filters or effects, and you want to do something like stylize this and make it look like oil paint, it'll give you these options that you can choose that will that'll let your click OK on that. Now it's going to basically turn that background into like oil painting. So you got to be careful because these can kind of look a little cheesy, right, if you're not careful. So But it's a good to know that these things are around and available if you want to try and mess around with them. So again, if I didn't like this, I could just go back in here to history and go back. So that's good. That's a good spot to stop for this one. Play around with some of these things, see what you can do with compositing, and then you should be ready to move on to a little bit more advanced level things.